Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're taking a closer look at Executive Order 14150.
That's the one titled America First Policy Directive to the Secretary of State.
Exactly. And our goal, really, is just to unpack its core ideas and what it might mean for U.S. foreign policy direction.
Right. We're sticking to the sources. The official White House doc from January 20th, 2025,
The wiki source entry confirming its publication.
and the actual Federal Register entry itself.
So think of this as us trying to get straight to the heart of this policy document. No spin, just what it says.
Precisely. We've got these specific sources, and we're just extracting the key bits, seeing how they fit together, what the intent seems to be on paper.
Okay, so let's jump right in then. Section 1 is purpose. It states, and I'm quoting here, "From this day forward, the foreign policy of the United States shall champion core American interests and always put America and American citizens first."
Wow. That's a very declarative way to start.
It is. What strikes you about that as the foundation?
Well, the language is really strong, isn't it? Unequivocal.
Yeah.
It immediately sets up this very clear priority. America first, American citizens first. It signals a definite focus.
It certainly sets a tone. But, the immediate question that springs to mind is, what are these core American interests?
Right.
Because the order itself, well, it doesn't spell them out.
And that's absolutely crucial. You've hit the nail on the head there.
Okay.
It establishes the priority, no doubt, but the definition, that's left open.
So it could mean different things depending on who's interpreting it.
Potentially, yes. I mean, traditionally you think national security, economic stuff, citizen well-being. But this order doesn't list its own specifics.
Which means the interpretation and the application will probably come later,
Yeah.
maybe from the Secretary of State.
That seems likely, especially given Section 2.
Ah, yes, Section 2, policy. This is where it gets more operational, I guess.
It directs the Secretary of State to act.
It says, "As soon as practicable, the Secretary of State shall issue guidance bringing the Department of State's policies, programs, personnel, and operations in line with an America First foreign policy."
Which puts America and its interests first.
Yeah. That sounds like a massive task, realigning the whole State Department.
It really does. It moves from just stating a principle to demanding action.
And it's comprehensive, too. Policies, programs, personnel, operations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It suggests this isn't just a surface change. The aim seems to be for this America First idea to filter through everything the State Department does.
What about that phrase, "as soon as practicable"? Does that mean right away, or?
Well, it definitely suggests urgency, doesn't it? They want it done quickly.
Yeah.
But practicable also builds in a bit of, realism. Realigning a huge organization like state takes time, planning, logistics,
So it's do it fast, but do it properly.
something like that. It signals intent for speed while allowing for the actual work involved.
Okay, now, Section 3 talks about general provision, limitations, basically.
Right, the standard caveats you often see.
Subsection A says it doesn't affect the legal authority of other departments or agencies. Why is that important?
It's about scope. It keeps the focus squarely on the State Department's foreign policy role.
So it avoids stepping on other agencies' toes, legally speaking.
Exactly. It prevents potential turf wars or confusion about who's responsible for what. This is aimed at state.
Then somebody says it doesn't interfere with the Office of Management and Budgets functions, budgeting, legislation stuff.
Yeah, another boundary. OMB has its critical role in, budgets and coordinating legislative proposals.
Right.
This just makes clear the order isn't trying to disrupt those established processes, keeps things orderly within the executive branch.
And then subsection B, implementation, shall be consistent with applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations.
Yes, the reality check, meaning an executive order can't just ignore existing laws passed by Congress.
Okay.
And critically, you can't do things if Congress hasn't actually allocated the money for it.
So it operates within the existing legal and financial system.
Precisely. It acknowledges those fundamental limits on presidential power.
Got it. And finally, Section 3C seems pretty blunt. It says the order doesn't create any new legal rights or benefits that someone could sue the government over.
Yes, that's a very common clause in EOs.
What's the practical effect?
It basically prevents people or groups from using this specific order as the basis for a lawsuit.
So you can't go to court and say, the government isn't following the America First order, so I'm suing.
Essentially, yes. It frames the order as an internal policy directive within the executive branch, not something that grants new enforceable rights to outsiders.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's shift just a bit to the documentation side. The Wikisource entry adds context.
Right, the procedural details.
It notes this is President Trump's fourth EO of his second term, signed January 20th, 2025.
Hmm.
And it became official Executive Order 14150 when it was published in the Federal Register on January 29th, 2025. Gives the volume and page number 2.
Yeah, 90 FR 83-387. That level of detail is important for, legal and historical tracking. It confirms its official status.
And the Federal Register itself, the official publication, backs this up.
It does. It provides the official PDF, which is key.
It also mentions the online version is a prototype.
Right. The Federal Register is the government's official journal, while the website is super convenient for access.
Yeah.
The actual legally binding version, until it's fully sanctioned online, is often considered the printed one or the authenticated PDF. It's about ensuring the official record is accurate and, well, legally sound.
Okay. So pulling this together for you, the listener, while this order is technically directed at the Secretary of State,
Mm-hmm.
its impact on how the U.S. deals with the rest of the world could be really significant.
Absolutely. Even without knowing the exact details of the guidance the Secretary will issue.
Right, we don't have that yet.
This order sets a very clear philosophical direction for American foreign policy.
It's the framework.
It's the overarching principle, yeah.
Yeah.
Understanding this directive is kind of key to grasping where U.S. foreign policy might be heading.
Which brings us back to that big question, the one the order itself doesn't fully define.
The core American interests.
No, I mean the principle itself. What does it actually look like day to day for the U.S. to always put America and American citizens first in foreign dealings?
That is the question, isn't it? And it's broad.
Yeah.
The real meaning will unfold and how it's implemented. But inherently, it suggests focusing on what are seen as domestic benefits, prioritizing U.S. goals in negotiations and relationships.
A shift in emphasis, perhaps?
Potentially a very significant one.
Okay, so let's recap this deep dive then. Executive Order 14150 puts America first right at the center of U.S. foreign policy.
Establishes it as the guiding principle.
It tells the Secretary of State to make the State Department follow that principle, policies, programs, the works.
Right, a full alignment.
But it also acknowledges limits existing laws, budgets,
The practical constraints.
and it explicitly doesn't create new legal rights for people to challenge things in court based on the order itself.
You've got it. It's a major policy signal from the top about America's stance towards the world.
So a final thought maybe for you to chew on.
Yeah.
In today's world, which is so interconnected, right? What happens long term when a major nation decides to consistently prioritize its own interests, defined internally above all else in foreign policy?
That's a big question. What are the ripple effects?
Exactly, on cooperation, on global stability, on alliances.
And what does it mean for the role the U.S. plays or wants to play on the world stage?
Lots to think about there. We definitely encourage you to keep exploring these issues around foreign policy and how executive power shapes it.